when you play the game, you give yourself to it, and the rules you become so acquainted with them, you stop thinking about them anymore.
Right. It's just what makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so part of this, framework, fabric of how religious people lived at that time was a sense that God has ordered the world around them. And there is something perhaps worse than being bound in slavery and captivity and exile. There maybe is something worse, and that is to have no rules at all.
Yeah.
To have absolute chaos, and to have no, clear sense of purpose or sense of self, which is, I think, a word to it's a postmodern kind of concern.
Yeah.
Where sometimes we're not sure which end is up anymore.
Yeah, where we're like, everything's okay, anything goes as long as you're happy.
And then, but then there's sometimes a pervasive sense of unhappiness. And,
completely. There's
confusion that actually binds us. And here, what Haggai is kind of trying to say, I think, is the positive construal of cleanliness laws is to say, you don't get to do everything, but there's actually a kind of freedom, a strange kind of freedom within that.
And knowing what the rules are.
Yes.
Yeah. And
agreeing on the convention. And
we've mentioned so many times the economic crisis, because that's pervasive in our particular historical setting right now, that I think the reason people feel so gut-wrenched about it, I think in a different way than before, is that we thought we knew what the rules were.
Right, and now the rules are completely,
and realizing that there were all these people who were playing with no rules, and feeling, and like that confusion of what is economics, like that we don't know anything anymore.
Yeah. I think that's quite right, and I think Haggai is trying to speak into that to say, let's focus.
Let's have more regulation.
And center. That's right.
So we all know what's going on, and we can all prosper together. And
then, to tag on with the New Testament, these laws are almost always seen as negative in the New Testament, where the rules have a kind of there's been a perversion where instead of rules creating justice and fairness and
boundaries,
good boundaries, they have become boundaries that have cut and have hurt.
They're collapsing.
And I think in our own culture, that has resonance where, especially like I grew up in Texas, not that far away from Jim Crow, where we saw boundaries used to crush and create terrible evils. And so we're so nervous about any boundaries at all. But Haggai's a good word, I think, coming back to us to say that sometimes there might be something worse than having no boundaries. And so part of what we're sort of shooting for perhaps is a balance. Kind of having rules that are fair and create a sense of community perhaps.
Right. Yeah.
But did you have anything more with... Oh, no, I did with the Coming Kingdom. Yeah.
You have the last story.
Yeah, the very end. This is where... Again, we're in the Restoration period. We're getting close to the New Testament, and I'll just read this a little bit because this is, intriguing. The word of the Lord came a second time to Haggai. Speak to Zerubbabel, the governor of Judah. He was the person who was making the second temple happen. I'm about to shake the heavens and the earth, to overthrow the throne of kingdoms. I'm about to destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the nations and overthrow the chariots and their riders. The horses and riders shall fall, everyone by the sword of a comrade. There's the sense of massive destruction. And then, God's going to choose Zerubbabel and make a signet ring. There's a kind of a sense of Davidic restoration there.
Yeah.
But, what's important here, and we'll see it wholesale in Zechariah next, is an expectation of terrible tribulation and trial, but then out of that, a coming kingdom of peace and kind of goodness for all time, if you will.
Yes.
And that's what, again, kind of that messianic expectation and hope, the entire New Testament is framed and steeped in that. You cannot understand it without getting this feeling.
Yeah.
All right, so Zechariah next.
Woohoo!